Hi, I'm going to talk about 1/2 times 1/4 and 1/2 minus 1/4. First, I'm going to start with the way that a lot of people were talking about it in class. So 1/2 times 1/4, a lot of people used a fraction bar and they used the area model, and they started off with thinking about what 1/2 is. So they would say, this is my whole, and I can think about just half of this. And then I saw a lot of people talking about, I can take 1/4 of this half. So if this is half, I could split it into 4 pieces. And since there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, I can look at just one out of those 4 pieces. But if I reflect on this to the whole, what the original whole is, and think about how it's partitioned all the way, you can see there's actually 8 total pieces, and so this is 1/8 or 1 piece out of those 8. A less common way, but also how I was thinking about it with area model, when I say less common, I meant for our class, and it perhaps is a very common way of thinking, is I thought about starting with a 1/4 instead. So I had a similar whole as everybody, and I thought about splitting up into a 1/4. And so there's 1 out of the 4 pieces. And then I thought about taking a half of that 1/4. And again, referencing the whole, that could be 8 total pieces, so it's 1 out of 8 again. So although most people in our class used area model, and I think a lot of people used fraction bars, as we've talked a lot about in this class, there's infinitely many visual representations we could use for this particular visual representation. We could do a number line. I'm going to pick one that's a very unconventional one that we've read about, just thinking about perimeter. So for instance, here is a square, and what we know about squares is that all 4 sides are equal, and we know there's 4 sides. So if we were thinking about 1/4 of the perimeter, that would be one of those side lengths. And then if we were thinking about going half the way on that perimeter, walking around, we could think about walking from one corner to the midpoint of the other side here. And if we were thinking about what that would look like on the whole perimeter of the square, if you were to walk around the whole edge, that would be 1 piece out of 8 pieces. That's a very uncommon representation, but I remember one of our readings was about all the different types of different embodiments and models for fractions, like perimeter and volume. And so I don't want you guys to be limited by just area model. Yeah, and so that was task 1, was to think about that, and then the second part was to write a story about this. And a lot of people did food contexts. So in terms of food, like let's say we were talking about brownies, I could say I had a half of a brownie. And then I ate 1/4 of it. So I purposely wrote this problem a little vague so we could talk about this. I had half of a brownie and I ate 1/4 of it. How much did I eat? So my question for you is, what is it? Is it I ate 1/4 of a brownie, or is it I ate 1/4 of what I had? And this is very important because we need to think about what our unit is. And then in this case, the 1/2 times 1/4 for problem posing, we're talking about taking 1/4 of what we have. So I had 1/2 of a brownie and I ate 1/4 of what I had. How much did I eat? I purposely posed this problem using, pose a story here using food, and also using the way that a lot of people in class started, where they started with the 1/2 and then taking the 1/4 of something. But what I'd like you to encourage you to do is to think about maybe some like non-food contexts or non-area contexts that you could maybe pose a story for. Let's just consider this square, for example. Perhaps you were thinking about planting marigolds along, well, those are supposed to be marigolds, but maybe they should be orange. Marigolds along this side of your fence. So you're wanting to plant marigolds on 1/4 of your square on 1/4 of your square fence. Oops. Maybe not on, maybe along. You want to plant marigolds along 1/4 of your square fence. After working in the afternoon, you want to plant marigolds along 1/4 of your fence. After working in the afternoon, you plant half of what you intend. And then the question could be, and I ran out of room for writing, is how many marigolds did you plant along your fence? Or how many, oh my goodness, words. How much did you plant along your fence? Okay. This one, again, a lot of people use area model, they use fraction bars or SLS circle models. And if people used area with circle model, they often started off with the 1/2. And they tried to illustrate removing 1/4. So removing this quarter, let's say here. And then highlighting what remained, which is 1/4. And in terms of, like, now that I'm using a circular area model, I could say something like, I'll say something similar to what people said in class. I had half of a pizza, ate 1/4 of a pizza for lunch. How much pizza is left? Now, this might seem straightforward because a lot of people in class had great visual representations. But what I want to highlight for us is this idea of our unit. I had 1/2 of a pizza and I ate 1/4 of a pizza. This is my referent unit here. And you'll notice that this unit is the same here as it is here. In both cases, I'm referencing the whole. I had 1/2 of a pizza. I ate 1/4 of that pizza. How much of that pizza is left? And so with addition, subtraction, it's the same whole. And what was maybe ambiguous is a lot of times people said it here. And last thing I want to remind us is that there's nothing wrong with area model, but we have learned other models, and one of the takeaways in this class was thinking about number line and also subtraction as distance. And so if I think about from 0 to 1 and this being 1/2 and then partitioning that and that 1/4 and this is 3/4. One model that didn't come up in class that certainly could have is that we could think about the distance between 1/2 and 1/4, and like you can think of this as 1/2 minus 1/4 being 1/4, meaning this 1/2 being this number here, this 1/4 being this number here, and this 1/4 being the distance in between. And I picked this example because I think it was one of the ones that had a lot of comments in our discussion forum, and it is beautiful, and it really highlights the original whole here nicely. And then thinking about what a 1/2 is and what a 1/4 of that 1/2 is. So I think it's great. And it also used food, which a lot of people used in class. So I think that was really great. And this is, I totally agree, this is 1/2 times 1/4, and it shows it. Wonderful. Alex has 1/2 of a chocolate bar. He gives 1/4 of that to his sister. And you have Alex and the sister marked, so it's quite lovely. And so similarly here, this visual representation shows 1/2 minus 1/4. Probably does a better job of what I did, even because it's showing the 1/2 originally and the importance of partitioning into fourths. But I picked it because here we can read Alex has 1/2 of a bag of chocolates. His sister took 1/4 of the chocolates. How much of the chocolate does Alex have left? And so this is sort of the thing that I want us to reflect on as we're posing stories, which is when we say 1/4 of the chocolates, do we mean these chocolates, like the whole original bag? Or do we mean just the 1/2? And so based on the picture, I think the student means the bag, like the whole bag. So I have 1/2 of a bag of chocolates. His sister took 1/4 of a bag of chocolates. I would just use the same unit again, which is how much of a bag does Alex have left? So about food, I think food is great. I mean, it can be a very compelling place for children to engage. They could find cookies, pizza, and brownies very relatable, certainly. But fractions is not just food. Fractions is so many other things. Or I should say fractions are. And so I would really challenge you to think about contexts and spaces that you can use outside of food for posing stories as a teacher. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful.